Alrighty, welcome back to the All Aussie Rules podcast. Today we've got episode 5, and we will be doing a round 1 preview with all my tips. That's coming up. Finally, we have all teams playing. Not just 8 of them, we've got all 18 playing this week. We're going to have a run through all the matches. We'll have a look at who I think will perform, who will not. And yeah, game by game. Let's do it. So, first up, Thursday night, which is tomorrow night if you're listening to this as it goes live. Otherwise, it'll be today or yesterday. We've got the traditional Carlton versus Brisbane game at the MCG. Always round 1. This time it's not their first game of the year because they both played last week. We had Carlton in the big upset over Brisbane up at the Gabba, which was a great performance by them. And we had Richmond also up on in the sunny state of Queensland versus Gold Coast, getting done by 39 points, which could have been quite a lot more if they didn't have one good quarter. In the third quarter they turned it on, but outside of that they were quite poor. Carlton are going to go reasonably heavy favourites into this, as they should. Last year, these two teams met in round 1, and that was a draw. In a game where Richmond dominated inside 50s. Both teams have changed a fair bit since that time in game style and performance. Carlton started a bit slow last year, got the ball rolling late, and have carried that on to this year. But Richmond dominated inside 50s. Hewitt and Cripps were great for Carlton and carried them. Taranto was very good. I think he had like 32 touches. And the big boys, Lynch and Curnow, each kicked 3. Then in 2022, they met twice. In round 14, they met. Richmond won by 15. Just because Carlton started slow that day. Mackay kicked 4. Lynch kicked 3 that day as well. Once again, Cripps was big. And they also met round 1, 2022. And Carlton won that by 25 points. Absolutely dominated the game. Carlton only won by 25, probably could have been more, and Cripps was absolutely massive that game. So last three times these two teams have met, Cripps has been very good, so I would expect to see him being pivotal again on a Thursday night at the G. So big factors in this game. We have Richmond made a few changes. They've obviously got Lynch, Martin and Nankervis all named, so that's huge for them. We'll hopefully turn them around a bit because they were a bit poor last week, but there are 3 big ins that will definitely contribute to them and having an improved performance in round 1. Carlton obviously started last week in quarter 1 were very slow, looked way off the pace, but after that absolutely lifted and got going and were very good. Richmond didn't show many positives, but who knows? We'll see what happens. But it's hard to predict Richmond winning this one, I think, based on what we've seen. I was about to say in round 1, in round 0. So after that, that's Thursday night, and then we go to Friday night. Once again, we're at the MCG. This one is another big game, Collingwood versus Sydney. Brodie Grundy, 2 games in 2 weeks, gets to play his 2 old teams. Collingwood will be going into this as slight favourites, not massive favourites, just favourites. Obviously, last week Collingwood got done by GWS by about 30 points, 32. And Sydney, on the other hand, were very good last week and beat Melbourne by 22. These two teams came up against each other last year at the MCG, so same ground in round 8, and Collingwood won by 29 points. It was pretty close for the first 3 quarters. Collingwood kicked away in the last. Mychek kicked 5, including 1 over his head. Sydney had a lot of the ball, didn't do much with it that game. Before that, these two teams met in the preliminary final in 2022. If if you remember. Sydney won that one by a point. They led comfortably most of the day, and then Collingwood came back, as they did a lot in that year, but couldn't quite get over the line. Cripps played well for Collingwood, and Papley kicked 3 goals for the Swans. The only other time they played that year was also at the SCG. Sydney won that by 27 points and looked comfortably in control most of the day. Key factors to look at in this game is Sydney, different team than last year. Obviously, Grundy's got into the middle. He was very good in the second half last week. First half, I thought he was a bit slow, but definitely picked it back up. Collingwood, can they bounce back from getting beaten last week? I don't think things are as bad as some people were saying. They definitely went inside 50 a lot. They tackled pretty well. I think it's just about converting going forward will be the major factor for Collingwood, and whether they can bounce back for a round 1 victory. Alright, we move to Saturday afternoon, and we have at the MCG again. So the first 3 games this round, all at the MCG, after no games in Melbourne last week. We have Essendon versus Hawthorn, Saturday afternoon. Essendon going in slight favourites in this one. We had last year they played at the G and round 1 as well last year. Essendon won that by 59 points. A lot of different goal kickers. Parrish had 37 touches. 2022 they played at Marvel in round 8 and Essendon won that by 27 as well, so they've won the last 2 meetings. Dons came out flying in that game after first quarter. It was pretty even. 2 metre Peter kicked six goals. I was about to say 6 metres, 6 goals. And once again, Parrish was huge. So they haven't played each other since round 1 last year, so quite a lot of time. Exactly a year, basically, almost to the day. Essendon won the last 2. No Parrish this time. He's been ruled out, I believe, so that's going to be, I don't know, interesting. He's obviously played very good against Hawthorn both last 2 times. I mean, he gets a lot of ball against a lot of teams, so no surprises there. I don't think either team is expecting too much. I mean, they're probably hoping that they can move into finals. I don't think either of these 2 teams are ready for finals just yet, but a lot can change in football in a week, let alone a year, so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, that's going to be Saturday afternoon. Moving into the evening game, it's usually the twilight game. I guess it kind of finishes. It finishes before twilight really hits. Before we get night at least. We have GWS versus North Melbourne at NG Stadium. GWS obviously heavy favourites after winning against Collingwood last week by 32. And you got to say, now that GWS have won that game against Collingwood, this is looking like a favourable first 2 games for them. They get another home game against North Melbourne, who didn't play last week, so that tends to be a bit of a advantage for the team that's already had a game. So I would expect that to not change on this one. Last year, these 2 teams met in round 13 down in Hobart, and GWS won by 28. Toby Green was massive. Larky kicked 4, and then the year before they met at Marvel. GWS won that one by 49. Himmelberg had 37 and a goal. Caniglio had 34 and 3 goals. Key things to look at in this one: GWS obviously won last week, looked very good. Mainly their transition game was very, very good. Got a lot of goals from defensive 50, and converting was a massive thing for them. So they've started hot and they look good there. North will be looking for an improvement. I don't think they would be expecting to win this one. This will be a very tough game for them first up, but they'll be looking to be competitive and showing signs that they can get more than 5 or 6 wins this year. If they can get 6, 7, 8 wins for the year, they're probably going to be pretty happy. And then Saturday night football. First we head down to the Cattery for Geelong versus St Kilda. Geelong will go in as favourites, mainly because it's in Geelong. I think probably pretty even game if it was at Marvel, but obviously it's not. It's down at the Cattery, so Geelong will go in favourites. They played last year at Marvel. St Kilda won that by 33. The year before, they played round 21 at the Cattery, and Geelong won that comfortably. And they played at Marvel that year as well in round 9, and St Kilda won that. So St Kilda have had the wood the last 2 times at Marvel, but the one time they played at the Cattery, the Cats got it done comfortably. Brad Crouch has been good the last few times against Geelong, so that's positive for them. Key factors, I think, as I said, it's in Geelong, so it probably gives Geelong the edge here. Important game, I think, for St Kilda. They need to show some signs early in the year to give them confidence to keep moving up and push for those finals spots. They'll probably be, they won't want to be losing too many early ones. And I think this is winnable for them. I don't know if they will win. I think it is possible, and a game that they should be targeting as an important one for them. Can Geelong bounce back after last year being underwhelming on most parts of the year? Last year they started the season with a loss against Collingwood when they should have probably won. They led most of the day, but yeah, we'll see what happens in there. Next up, also Saturday night, we head up to the Gold Coast for a game versus Adelaide. Gold Coast go into this as favourites after beating Richmond last week and looking very good while doing so. Last year they played in round 21 at Adelaide Oval, and Adelaide won that by 28 points after a very good start to the game for the Crows, and then they just kind of held that lead throughout. They also went to Darwin to play each other, which Gold Coast won by 25 points. Mainly in the second half they did well there. Lukosius kicked 5, and then the last time these two played each other at this ground was 2022, round 14. Gold Coast won that one by 43 points. Had a lot of multiple goal kickers, Gold Coast, that day, and Laird had 42 touches for the Crows. Big things to look at in this one. I would expect Gold Coast coming off a good performance, put them in good stead. Adelaide, obviously not having played last weekend, are going to be at a disadvantage because of that. Plus, they're also going up to Gold Coast, where Gold Coast get 2 weeks in a row at their home ground, so a good start for them. They win this, and they're going to be in a very, very strong spot going into round 2. Expect Adelaide to be good. It's a tough start for them, this one, so I wouldn't write Adelaide off if they go down by 5 goals to Gold Coast. I think they get within 5 goals, but I wouldn't be too concerned with Adelaide if they do lose this week. So that's the end of Saturday games, and we go on to Sunday. First up, Sunday, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. We head back to the MCG, where we have Melbourne versus the Bulldogs. Melbourne will go in as favourites. They obviously lost by 22 to Sydney last week, up in Sydney. Last year, these two teams opened up against each other. Obviously, Melbourne have played a game this year, but last year they played at the G. Same ground, same round. Melbourne absolutely dominated by 50. After Bulldogs started well, Melbourne kicked 13 of the last 17 goals, which is quite a big domination in the second quarter onwards. Pickett and Brown kicked 4 goals each. In 2022, they played in round 19. Bulldogs won that by 10 points at Marvel. Ugle-Hagan kicked 5, Fritsch kicked 4. And in round 1, they played at the MCG in 22 as well. So this is 3 years in a row they were playing at the G in round 1. Melbourne won that one by 26 points. McRae was very good. Norton kicked 4. Key moments of this game. Important one for Melbourne. They lost last week. They won't want to go 0-2, especially after going out in straight sets. So they've lost their last all three official games. They won't want to be losing a fourth in a row. That will put them in a bad spot. These two teams tend to play in very high disposal games, so expect players to rack them up. I would imagine both teams will be racking them up this week. I think Gawn is in for a big game. He I wouldn't say had his colours lowered, but he was beaten last week by Grundy, so he'll want to come out and put on a performance for the ages, I think. But we'll see. The last three times they've played twice at the MCG. Melbourne have won both at the G comfortably, and Bulldogs won the one at Marvel. So make of that what you will, but you'd expect Melbourne to probably take the chocolates there. Then we start heading across towards the western side of the country. We stop over at Adelaide Oval for Port Adelaide versus West Coast. Neither team has played yet this season. Port Adelaide will go in as massive favourites in this for obvious reasons. Last year, the last two times they've played, they've both been at Adelaide Oval, and Port Adelaide have won them both, one by 40 and one by 84. Yep, 84 points. Last year, Finlayson kicked 5, and the time before they won inside 50, 65 to 34. Finlayson kicked 5 that day as well as Marshall. So Finlayson has had success against the Eagles. Port Adelaide, you'd expect would be raring to go, ready to go. They get a game at Adelaide Oval against one of the lower ranked teams. You'd think they'd be raring to put a big score on the board. I think you'll see a pretty dominant performance from the Power Eagles. For them, they just want to be competitive. Harley Reid's first official game, but they really just need to show something. There was quite a few games last year where they were a bit of witches' hats. Yes, they've had a tough run with injuries, but they'll be wanting to show something, I think, will be the important thing for them. Final game of the round, we do make it all the way to the west for Fremantle versus Brisbane. Brisbane look like starting as favourites unless something drastic happens in the next couple days. Brisbane obviously played last week. My notes are incorrect. I said they lost by 22. They lost by 1 point against Carlton. They've had a bit of a break because they played Friday and they don't play again all the way till Sunday. They will want to bounce back quite big, I reckon. Last year, round 21, they played over in the West, and Brisbane got up by 3 points after trailing by about 20 throughout the third quarter. Luke Jackson was massive for Freo, but as I said, Brisbane came back and got the win. They also played at the Gabba last year, which Brisbane won comfortably by 38 points after dominating inside 50s, and then in 2022 they played at Optus as well, and Freo won that by 14. So Freo do obviously play well at Optus. Brisbane have got their work cut out for them travelling across the country, but we'll see how that plays out. Brisbane need to bounce back. There's no two ways about it. They threw last week's game away. They kicked 7 goals in the first quarter and lose. Is never a good start to your season, especially at the Gabba. So they've got a bit of a tough run now. Hard thing to travel all the way to the other side of the country, play the harder one of the two teams over in the West. This is a good opportunity, I think, for Freo. Yes, it's their first game, so Brisbane kind of get that advantage, but I think it will help that they get the home game at least, and yeah, we'll see how they show up in round 1. Alright, we'll head over and have a look at my tips for the week. And here they are. So, game 1 is Carlton-Richmond. I have Carlton winning this by 31. Richmond showed me nothing last week. To be honest, it could be much more than that based on what we saw last week, but Richmond do have a few big ins, so I think that might help them a little bit. if Carlton play what they did after quarter time last week, I can't see how they would lose to Richmond. So yeah, Carlton by 31. Collingwood Sydney. Collingwood I have by 13. Collingwood got the home game here against Sydney. They'll be keen and raring to bounce back against the other New South Wales team. But will be a tight match, I would imagine. Essendon Hawthorn, a game that could go either way. Depends what team shows up, what team's ready to go. I have Essendon by 5, but not with any confidence tipping either of those teams this year at the moment, I don't think. GWS over North Melbourne by 50. I have. It's hard to see GWS losing. They were very good last week. North Melbourne obviously haven't played a game yet, and probably not in the same league as GWS at this point in time. Geelong St Kilda, I have Geelong by 7 only because it's at the Cattery. If it was at Marvel, I'd have St Kilda by probably 15-20. So you've got to play them where you've got to play them though. So that's unlucky for St Kilda, but 7 points for Geelong. Gold Coast v Adelaide, I have Gold Coast by 15. Gold Coast get the advantage of having played last weekend. They're ready to go. They played very well. Adelaide first up, going up to the sunny state of Queensland. It's not going to help them. So I think Gold Coast are the better at this point in time. Gold Coast are the team to beat in that one. Melbourne versus the Bulldogs at the MCG. Melbourne by 27. They weren't terrible last week, Melbourne. I think they also, as a couple other teams in GWS and Gold Coast, get the advantage of that they played last week. So I think just due to that, are going to go in as favourites, and also the fact that it's at the MCG helps them. So I have Melbourne by 27. Port Adelaide versus West Coast. It's hard to see West Coast being competitive enough to get within 5 goals. I have Port Adelaide by 61. And the final game of the week is Freo Brisbane. It is over there, but I have Brisbane by 7 due to them having played last week. If this was round 1, both teams fresh, I would almost consider Fremantle, but we'll go with Brisbane and see how that one goes. So that's a full preview of round 5 done and dusted. Thanks for joining. As you can see down below me, I have YouTube and Spotify, where this are the 2 platforms that this podcast will be going out on. I'm going to add a few more as we go. I also have Twitter/X and Instagram, so check me out on there. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, you know all the jazz. I appreciate everyone that listens and watches and interacts. If you enjoy it, share with your friends. But for now, I'll see you next week.